November 8, 1942. Sidi Bou Zid, Tunisia, North Africa. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the rugged ground as Obergefreiter Wilhelm Schmidt crouched behind a low stone barrier. His Karabiner 98K rifle was clutched firmly in both hands. The bolt felt familiar and reassuring in his grip after 3 years of war. Load a round, fire, pull back the bolt. Eject the spent shell. Push forward, chamber the next round, aim, fire again. This was the rhythm of combat he knew. The same rhythm that had carried German infantry through Poland, France, and deep into the Soviet Union. 5 rounds in the internal magazine, fired individually, each demanding manual operation of the bolt. Across the dusty plain, American soldiers advanced in a loose skirmish line. Schmidt had been told these Americans were inexperienced, soft, and untested in true battle. Their weapons supposedly inferior, their training inadequate. What happened in the next minute would prove those assumptions disastrously false. The Americans opened fire. The sound was unlike anything Schmidt had ever heard. Not the steady crack-pause crack of bolt-action rifles, but a continuous roar of semi-automatic gunfire that didn't stop. 8 shots fired as fast as the trigger could be pulled. No pause to cycle a bolt, no break in rhythm, only unbroken, deliberate fire. While Schmidt managed perhaps 3 rounds, the American across from him had already emptied his 8-round clip and was reloading. This was the M1 Garand rifle, and it was about to shatter the foundation of German infantry doctrine. The psychological shock on German troops, trained to believe in the supremacy of their arms and tactics, proved as devastating as the weapon's actual firepower. This wasn't merely a tale of technical superiority, but of a complete tactical upheaval forced upon an entire army. The roots of German confidence lay in a martial tradition centuries old. The Karabiner 98K, officially adopted on June 21, 1935, represented the zenith of bolt-action rifle design. Accurate up to 550 yards with iron sights, dependable in mud and freezing temperatures, and simple enough for conscripts to maintain, the Kar 98K embodied everything the German military valued in a rifle. It fired the powerful 7.92 Gu 57mm Mauser cartridge, capable of punching through substantial cover. In trained hands, the Kar 98K had conquered much of Europe. German doctrine emphasized precise, controlled fire from prepared defensive positions. Infantry training drilled into soldiers that every shot must count. A well-trained German rifleman could fire about 15 aimed rounds per minute, working the bolt with practiced smoothness. Against Polish, French, or British troops armed with similar bolt-action weapons, this seemed more than sufficient. The British Lee Enfield, with its 10-round magazine, could fire somewhat faster, but German officers dismissed this as a trade-off that reduced accuracy. When American forces entered large-scale combat in North Africa during Operation Torch, German intelligence had already prepared assessments of U.S. equipment. These reports portrayed America as a nation of industrial excess but military naivety. U.S. infantry, they claimed, relied too heavily on firepower and too little on tactical finesse. The M1 Garand appeared in those evaluations as a semi-automatic curiosity, but not a serious concern. Analysts noted its 8-round capacity and self-loading system, but also remarked on its extra weight, roughly 9.5 pounds versus the Kar 98K's 8.2. The consensus was that, while the M1 could deliver more fire, it did so at the cost of precision and rugged reliability inherent to the simpler bolt-action rifle. Yet, American forces had already been using the M1 Garand in combat since December 8, 1941, when Japanese forces invaded the Philippines the morning after Pearl Harbor. M1 rifles shipped between August and November 1941 had equipped the U.S. Army's Philippine Division and elite Philippine Scouts. These soldiers used their Garands effectively enough that Japanese troops reportedly believed they faced machine gun fire. General Douglas MacArthur cabled in February 1942, praising the rifle's performance in the dust and dirt of foxhole fighting. By the time German forces faced Americans in North Africa, The M1 Garand had proven itself through nearly a year of brutal jungle combat. The reality encountered on North African plains shattered German assumptions with brutal efficiency. Schmidt's unit established defensive positions expecting to stop American advances, with disciplined, aimed fire. When Americans attacked, the volume of return fire was massive. Not machine gun fire, which Germans expected and knew how to handle, but rifle fire, continuous sustained rifle fire. German soldiers would fire, work the bolt, acquire the target again, fire, perhaps 15 rounds per minute from trained soldiers. But each American was firing 30 to 40 rounds per minute, hitting their targets. Germans could not suppress them. Every time they raised their heads to fire, multiple rounds came back immediately. The mathematics were undeniable. In a 2-minute engagement, a German soldier with a Kar 98K might fire 30 aimed rounds. An American with an M1 Garand could fire 80 rounds in the same period. More critically, the German soldier had to break his sight picture, work the bolt, reacquire his target, and fire. The American simply pulled the trigger 8 times in rapid succession, his aim barely disturbed by the rifle's modest recoil. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic operation relied on a gas-operated system as a round-fired propellant gases are diverted through a port in the barrel into a cylinder below. This gas drove a piston that cycled the action, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering a new round. The entire process took a fraction of a second. The rifle's action remained closed between shots, maintaining barrel-to-sight alignment. Accuracy did not suffer despite rapid fire. Testing at Springfield Armory demonstrated the M1 could maintain 4-minute of angle groups, 4 in of spread at 100 yards. Many production rifles performed significantly better. General George S. Patton, in a letter dated January 26, 1945, to Major General Levin H. Campbell, Jr., Chief of Ordnance, wrote, "In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest battle implement ever devised." This was not hyperbole. Patton recognized the rifle had radically altered infantry combat. A soldier armed with an M1 Garand carried firepower comparable to several riflemen with bolt-action weapons without sacrificing accuracy, dependability, or effective range. By mid-1943, the U.S. Army was equipping whole divisions with M1 Garands. During World War II, roughly 1937-1945, millions of M1 rifles were produced. Springfield Armory in Massachusetts turned out 3,526,922 rifles, while Winchester Repeating Arms in Connecticut made 513,040. Production reached such scale that by D-Day in June 1944, virtually every American rifleman carried an M1 Garand, an unprecedented achievement. An entire army in the millions, fielded with semi-automatic rifles while many opponents still relied on bolt actions. The M1's technical specs tell only part of the story. The rifle fired the .30-06 Springfield cartridge, a powerful round in U.S. service since 1906. The cartridge propelled a 150-grain bullet at roughly 2,800 FDS, delivering substantial energy at extended ranges. The rifle fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip, a metal clip inserted directly into the action. When the last round fired, the clip ejected with a characteristic metallic ping. While some worried that the sound might betray the shooter, combat veterans universally reported that battlefield noise usually rendered the ping inaudible beyond a few yards. The Garand's reliability became legendary. Exposed to North African dust, Italian mud, Northern European cold, and, later, Korean winter, the M1 functioned with minimal upkeep. Field stripping required no tools. The operating rod and bolt could be removed for cleaning in minutes and reassembled quickly. German observers repeatedly noted this dependability, with a mix of respect and frustration. German defensive doctrine leaned heavily on machine guns to provide suppressive fire while riflemen made deliberate aimed shots. The MG-34 and later the MG-42 were superb weapons, but they required crews, ammunition bearers, and were vulnerable to artillery. The M1 Garand altered that balance. American infantry squads, with each rifleman carrying a Garand, could generate volume of fire approaching that of German machine gun teams. and, crucially, that firepower was distributed across the entire squad. Suppressing an American squad meant suppressing 8 or 9 individually armed soldiers. The Italian campaign from September 1943 onward gave German units extensive exposure to fighting U.S. troops. From the Salerno landings through brutal battles toward Rome, German infantry repeatedly found themselves outfired by American riflemen. A March 1944 report from the 94th Infantry Division, captured after Rome fell, noted that engagements with American infantry often left Germans pinned down by rifle fire even when occupying superior positions. The report recommended more machine guns to offset the American advantage in small unit firepower. The German military sought remedies. The Gewehr 41, G41, introduced in 1941, was the first German attempt at a semi-automatic service rifle. 2 rival designs emerged, the G41M from Mauser and the G41W from Walther, but both proved deeply flawed. German specifications forbade drilling a gas port in the barrel for fear of premature wear. Designers were forced to adopt complex gas trap systems at the muzzle. These assemblies fouled easily, added weight, and were unreliable. The rifles were complicated to produce and maintain, and total production was limited. Estimates range from about 6,000 to 15,000 units before the design was abandoned. German engineers studied captured Soviet SVT-40s and acknowledged that a gas port system actually worked. The result was the Gewehr 43, G43, introduced in October 1943. This rifle used a simpler gas system and a detachable 10-round magazine. It was lighter and more reliable than the earlier G41s. Production totaled roughly 42,713 rifles by war's end, with about 53,435 fitted with telescopic sights for designated marksmen. The G43 was capable appreciated by soldiers who received it. However, it arrived too late and in too few numbers. For every 50 Kar 98K rifles produced, only one G43 was manufactured. The vast majority of German infantry continued carrying bolt-action rifles until war's end. Even soldiers who received the G43 found it was note-equivalent to the M1 Garand. The German rifle, while effective, was more complicated, more difficult to maintain in field conditions, and suffered from parts availability issues as German industry came under increasing strain. The fundamental problem was that Germany had entered war without an effective semi-automatic infantry rifle and never caught up. The impact of the M1 Garand extended beyond simple firepower. Therefore changed how American infantry fought. Training emphasized rapid target acquisition and continuous fire. American infantry tactics assumed every rifleman could put substantial fire on target quickly. Squads advanced by fire and maneuver with half the squad laying down covering fire while the other half moved. The volume of fire from M1 Garands made this tactic devastatingly effective. At Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944, the 352nd Infantry Division defended fortified positions on the bluffs. This full-strength 12,020-man division occupied what should have been nearly impregnable positions with excellent fields of fire, reinforced concrete emplacements, and interlocking machine gun positions. When Americans reached the base of the bluffs, their fire was overwhelming. Every man had a semi-automatic rifle and deuced it continuously. German defenders could not maintain aimed fire because incoming rounds were too numerous. Machine gun crews were targeted by dozens of rifles simultaneously. The Normandy fighting in June and July 1944 provided German infantry extensive exposure to American firepower in confined hedge spaces where combat occurred at ranges under 100 YD. The M1 Garand's rapid fire proved decisive. Traditional German tactics of a few riflemen covering a position while others maneuvered no longer worked. Covering fire from M1 Garands was too heavy, too sustained, forcing German troops to keep their heads down. Statistical analysis conducted by the U.S. Army's Historical Division after the Wehr Examining after-action reports and casualty data revealed that American infantry squads inflicted casualties at rates significantly higher than expected based on their numbers. While many factors contributed, including artillery, air superiority, and logistics, the consistent advantage in infantry firefights pointed clearly to the M1 Garand's role. American infantrymen could expect to win engagements, even when outnumbered, provided they had reasonable cover and adequate ammunition. The German Army's solution came in the form of the Sturm 44, the world's first true assault rifle. Firing an intermediate cartridge, the 7.92 by 33 mm Kurz from a 30-round magazine in either semi-automatic or fully automatic mode. The Saint G44 represented revolutionary thinking. Approximately 425 977 were produced mostly in 1944 and 1945. But like the G43, the Saint G44 arrived too late and in insufficient numbers. Most German infantry never saw one. Those who did often lacked adequate ammunition as Germany's industrial capacity crumbled. The M1 Garand's technical evolution began long before World War II. John Cantius Garand, born January 1, 1888 in St. Remy, Quebec, Canada, moved to the United States with his family in 1899. He began working at Springfield Armorian, November 4, 1919, devoting nearly 2 decades to perfecting his semi-automatic rifle design. Early prototypes used different operating systems and calibers. The U.S. Army originally favored a 276 caliber cartridge offering better ballistics than 3006, but General Douglas MacArthur, then Army Chief of Staff, insisted on retaining 3006 to utilize existing ammunition stocks and maintain compatibility with machine guns. This decision made in 1932 delayed adoption, but ultimately proved sound. Garand continued refining his design through the early 1930s. The rifle underwent extensive testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground and Springfield Armory. Problems were identified and corrected. The gas system was simplified from an early gas trap design to a simpler gas port system. The trigger mechanism was refined. The stock design was improved for better ergonomics. On January 9, 1936, the rifle was officially adopted as the U.S. Rifle Caliber 30. M1 initial production was slow with only a few thousand rifles. Manufactured in 1937 and 1938, production accelerated as war loomed, reaching 600 rifles per day by January 1941. The M1 Garand served American forces through World War II, the Korean War, and into early Vietnam years. It was not officially replaced as the standard service rifle until the M14 was adopted in 1957, designated as replacement on March 26, 1958, with first deliveries to troops beginning July 1959. Full transition across all units took until 1961. Even then, M1 Garands remained in use with Reserve and National Guard units into the 1970s. The M1 Garand's psychological impact on German soldiers manifested in profound ways. The weapon represented technological superiority that contradicted everything they had been taught about American capabilities. German soldiers had been conditioned by propaganda to believe in Germanic technological and tactical superiority, when individual German infantrymen, properly equipped and well-trained, found themselves unable to win firefights against individual American infantrymen. The myth of superiority collapsed. After World War II, detailed studies of small unit actions consistently showed American infantry inflicting disproportionate casualties in firefights. The rifle each soldier carried made a measurable difference in combat effectiveness. American casualties from German rifle fire were proportionally lower, another indicator of the M1's effectiveness. German attempts to compensate through superior tactics and positioning worked only partially. Eventually, the sheer volume of aimed fire from American infantry would find targets, suppress defensive positions, and enable American maneuver elements to close with and destroy German positions. The M1 Garand's legacy extends beyond World War II into modern firearms development. The principle it demonstrated that infantry benefit from self-loading rifles increasing their rate of fire without sacrificing accuracy became foundational to post-war weapon development. Every modern infantry rifle, from the AK-47 to the M16 to current assault rifles, owes conceptual debt to the M1 Garand. It proved that semi-automatic operation was not just feasible for military rifles, but essential. The story of German infantry encountering American forces armed with M1 Garands represents a moment when technological advantage met traditional military excellence, and demonstrated that superior technology matters profoundly. German infantry training, tactical doctrine, and individual soldier quality were excellent by objective measures. But excellence with inferior weapons produces inferior results. The M1 Garand gave American infantrymen a tool allowing them to fight effectively even when outnumbered, to win firefights even facing veteran troops, and to advance against fortified positions that should have been nearly impregnable. From the Philippines to North Africa, from Sicily to Normandy, from the Hadrosto to the Rhine, the M1 Garand served faithfully and effectively. It earned its reputation as one of the finest military rifles ever designed, and Patton's famous praise was fully justified. German soldiers learned through hard experience, on battlefields across multiple theaters, that American infantry firepower represented a fundamental tactical challenge. Their bolt-action rifles could not overcome. The M1 Garand demonstrated that warfare had entered a new era. The days of massed infantry armed with bolt-action rifles were over. Semi-automatic rifles were the future, and the M1 Garand made that clear to militaries worldwide. German infantrymen, courageous and well-disciplined as they were, fought with weapons that placed them at a disadvantage in the most essential duty of infantry combat, shooting the enemy before being shot themselves. The arithmetic of battle remained unchanged throughout the conflict. In the time it took a German soldier to fire 3 deliberate shots from his Kar 98K, an American with an M1 Garand could discharge 8. When both men possessed equal skill and training, the American could strike 2 to 3 times as many targets. In squad-level clashes, this disparity became decisive. The M1 Garand granted U.S. infantry a numerical edge in firepower, even when German units outnumbered them in personnel. German strategists analyzing their wartime defeats afterward consistently identified this firepower imbalance as pivotal. Former General der Panzertruppe Hasso von Manteuffel, who led the 5th Panzer Army during the Battle of the Bulge beginning December 16, 1944, wrote in his post-war memoirs that American infantry firepower surpassed that of German troops, even when the latter occupied defensive positions. The human toll of this imbalance was visible in casualty figures, although many variables, artillery, air support, tactics, and terrain, influenced losses. Studies of small unit battles consistently revealed that American infantry inflicted disproportionate casualties during firefights. The rifle in each soldier's hands made a measurable difference. German losses from rifle fire were substantial throughout the war, and the M1 Garand earned much of the credit. In the final analysis, the M1 Garand's influence on World War II went far beyond its technical details. It embodied American industrial foresight, engineering ingenuity, and the nation's resolve to provide its troops with the finest weapons available. While Germany struggled with intricate semi-automatic rifle projects that never reached effective mass production, the United States had already outfitted its entire military with a dependable, battle-tested semi-automatic rifle before entering the war. This advantage, multiplied across millions of soldiers and countless engagements, played a decisive role in the Allied triumph. The unmistakable crack of the M1 Garand's fire, the metallic ping of its ejected clip, and the sight of American troops advancing with rifles at the ready became synonymous with Allied dominance in Europe and the Pacific. German troops came to recognize and dread that sound, knowing it signaled opponents who could unleash superior firepower swiftly and precisely. The M1 Garand truly was the finest battle implement ever created, and its superiority over the Kari, 98K was proven beyond doubt on battlefields from 1941 through 1945. The rifle alone didn't win the war. Victory demanded combined arms coordination, air mastery, industrial capacity, and the bravery of millions. Yet at the squad level, where combat was most personal, the M1 Garand provided a clear and measurable edge that German infantry could not neutralize. That edge saved countless American lives and hastened the war's conclusion. The M1 Garand stands as enduring proof of what well-conceived military design can accomplish. It demonstrated that equipping soldiers with the most effective tools pays immense dividends in battlefield performance and mission success. Serving the U.S. military for over 2 decades and across 3 major wars, its legacy shaped future rifle designs for generations. To the German soldiers who faced it in combat, the M1 Garand was a harsh lesson in technological truth, that superior equipment, wielded by skilled hands, can decisively shape the outcome of battle.